The world is facing a massive infrastructure gap that hinders economic growth, social development, and environmental sustainability. According to the World Bank, low- and middle-income countries need more than $40 trillion of infrastructure investment by 2035 to meet their development goals. However, many of these countries lack the resources, expertise, and governance capacity to finance and implement quality infrastructure projects that are aligned with their needs and values. That's why the G7 leaders have launched a bold new global initiative called Build Back Better World, B3W. B3W is a values-driven, high-standard, and transparent infrastructure partnership led by major democracies to help narrow the infrastructure gap in the developing world. B3W will mobilize private sector capital in 4 areas of focus: climate, health and health security, digital technology, and gender equity and equality. B3W will also adhere to high standards of environmental and social safeguards, anti-corruption, rule of law, and debt sustainability. B3W is not only a positive initiative for meeting the tremendous infrastructure needs of low- and middle-income countries, but also a strategic response to China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. BRI is a massive infrastructure program that aims to connect China with Asia, Africa, Europe, and beyond through roads, railways, ports, pipelines, power plants, and other projects. However, BRI has been widely criticized for its lack of transparency, poor quality, environmental degradation, debt traps, and political influence. Many BRI projects have failed to deliver on their promises of economic benefits and social development for the host countries. B3W offers a better alternative to BRI by providing high-quality infrastructure that is responsive to the needs and preferences of the recipient countries and communities. B3W will also promote regional connectivity and cooperation among like-minded partners who share common values and interests. B3W will be global in scope, covering low- and middle-income countries across Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, and the Indo-Pacific. By launching B3W, the G7 leaders have demonstrated their commitment to building a more prosperous, resilient, and inclusive world for all. B3W is not only an affirmative initiative for meeting the tremendous infrastructure needs of low- and middle-income countries but also a powerful expression of our shared values as democracies. One of the main goals of the G7 countries is to abolish their dependence on China, especially in the areas of infrastructure, climate change, and digital technology. To achieve this, they have launched a new initiative called Build Back Better World, B3W, which aims to mobilize private and public funds to finance projects that address these challenges in low- and middle-income countries. The G7 countries have pledged to raise $600 billion in private and public funds over 5 years to finance projects that address climate change, global health, gender equity and digital infrastructure. This is a significant amount of money, considering that the current gap in infrastructure financing for developing countries is estimated at $40 trillion. The B3W initiative is also a response to China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which has been criticized for creating debt traps, environmental damage, and lack of transparency in many countries. The B3W initiative will focus on 4 areas of climate action: clean energy transition, climate resilience, nature conservation, and clean transport. The G7 countries will support projects that help low- and middle-income countries reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, adapt to the impacts of climate change, protect biodiversity, and improve their mobility and connectivity. Some examples of such projects are renewable energy plants, coastal protection works, forest restoration programs, and electric vehicle charging stations. The G7 countries will also coordinate with other like-minded partners, such as the V20 group of climate-vulnerable countries, to ensure that the B3W initiative is aligned with the needs and priorities of the recipient countries. The G7 countries will also adhere to high standards of transparency, sustainability, and accountability in the implementation of the B3W initiative. They will ensure that the projects are environmentally sound, socially inclusive, financially viable, and respectful of human rights and labor standards. The B3W initiative is an ambitious and bold attempt by the G7 countries to show their leadership and solidarity in addressing the global challenges of the 21st century. By investing in infrastructure that supports climate action, health security, gender equality, and digital innovation, the G7 countries hope to create a more prosperous, resilient, and democratic world for themselves and for others. The G7 countries have also declared their intentions to reduce excessive dependencies on China in their critical supply chains and to counter China's economic coercion and unfair practices. This is a major shift in the global economic order, as China is the world's second-largest economy and a key trading partner for many countries. One of the reasons for this decision is to make global supply chains more resilient by diversifying sources of production and investment. The G7 countries have seen how the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the vulnerabilities of relying too much on China for essential goods and services, such as medical equipment, semiconductors, and rare earth metals. They have also witnessed how China has used its economic power to pressure other countries on political and human rights issues, such as Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Xinjiang. To achieve their goal of reducing dependence on China, the G7 countries have agreed to work together and with other partners, especially low- and middle-income countries. They have launched a new initiative called Build Back Better World, B3W, which aims to provide high-quality infrastructure investment in areas such as climate, health, digital technology, and gender equality. The initiative is seen as a response to China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which has been criticized for creating debt traps and environmental problems for many developing countries. The G7 countries have also discussed the need for targeted controls on investment to China, as proposed by the United States. The idea is to limit the flow of capital and technology that could benefit China's military or strategic sectors, such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and aerospace. However, not all G7 countries are keen on this idea, as they fear it could harm their own economic interests and trade relations with China. Germany and Japan, in particular, are cautious about being seen as forging a G7 front against Beijing. The G7 countries have stated that they do not seek to harm China or thwart its economic progress and development. They have expressed their willingness to build constructive relations with China based on mutual respect and cooperation. However, they have also made it clear that they will not compromise on their values and interests when it comes to defending democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. They have called on China to respect the international rules and norms that govern trade, investment, security, and human dignity.